So today we're joined by five illustrious panelists who are also alumni of the program, who we've invited to come on and share some of their experiences with you. This information session is focused on really addressing the questions and areas of concern for women who are considering getting their MBA and looking at BYU. So we'd love to have this discussion and answer your questions and be able to present to you some of the things that make BYU's MBA program special, make it unique, and help it create an environment where we provide opportunities for life-changing transformation. And I think the best way to convey that to you is by hearing the stories of these women who have successfully been through the program and are willing, and we appreciate very much their time to come back and share with us about their experiences, answer some of our questions, and talk to you about the decision they made and the value of their BYU education. So I'd like to hand over the microphone here to Lori Depew Stockton, who will be leading out these questions, and allow her to introduce herself. And we'd like you to save any questions that you have until the end. We'll be monitoring chat and conversations, but we have kind of a structure here of Q&A where we'd love to be able to hear the stories from these alumni and get a chance to learn about their choice and their experience with BYU.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the intro, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm really excited to be with you today. I think I speak for all of the five of us that the MBA program was hugely impactful and enabling for our lives today, and a very positive choice that we made. So excited to explore it with you today and share our stories. I'm Lori Depew Stockton. I'll introduce myself more in a minute. We're actually going to go kind of around the clock here. Everyone's going to introduce themselves, tell you just a little bit about who they are, how they got to just briefly, what they studied in the program, what they studied before, just quick introductions, and then we'll dive into a little bit more details. So to kick us off, Elise, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Lori. Thanks, Sean. It's good to see you all. My name's Elise Hardle. So I think, yeah, I'll start at the beginning. So my undergraduate degrees, I actually double majored in math and environmental science. Kind of had no idea what I wanted to do and ended up at a tech startup for a few years, and then came back to do the MBA at BYU. My undergrad was at BYU. In the MBA, my emphasis was in supply chain. I actually joined the program with my husband, so we went through it together. We did not meet in the program. We were married before. Went through the program, and then after the program, we moved to California for a few years. I spent some time at Apple, and then just a couple of months ago, I joined Adobe here in Lehigh. We moved back to Utah. So it's me, my husband. I have two boys. They're 3 and 1. I graduated in 2019, so the kids came after. I didn't go through the program with kids. Yeah, and I would just say the one thing I always tell people is I wish I could do the MBA program again. I had a blast. I learned so much, met amazing people, and I recommend it to almost anyone I meet.
Thanks, Elise. Julie, can you go next?
Sure. And I'll apologize ahead of time. I got kicked out, so I hope my audio is okay. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm Julie Carvalho. I finished my MBA in 2012, a little while ago. Before going to the MBA program, my undergrad was in communications, and I worked for some agencies coming out of undergrad, and then right before going back to school, to MBA school, I was the program manager for Stephen Covey. So had a great opportunity to kind of be mentored by a really great thought leader, which also influenced while I was in the program. My focus was organizational behavior and human resources, which I'm not even sure if that track really still exists, but that's what I studied, I focused on. What am I doing now? So about almost 2 years ago, I actually gave birth to triplets. So I was a senior manager most recently at Adobe, and about 9 months ago, I resigned from corporate America, working full time. And now the things that I'm doing are really kind of on the side. So when my children right now, during this time of their lives and mine, I've decided to stay home full time, but I still do some side hustles. So I'm a program manager, kind of a business manager for an artist in the area, which has been awesome to be able to work around my kids' schedule, and still apply the skills and my interests. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks, Julie. I'll go next. Lori Depew Stockton. I graduated in 2013. Before the MBA program, my undergrad degree was in music education. I was a voice major, and I taught middle school choir and theater for 2 years. And then very random circuitous path, decided to get an MBA. I was also in the HR track with Julie, which is still there, does still exist. So we overlapped for a year, which was cool. It's fun to see you here. And when I graduated, I got recruited to Procter & Gamble to work in their HR group in Cincinnati. And I was there for 9 years. It was fantastic. I'm still with Procter & Gamble, but I just moved to Colorado earlier this year, and I'm working remote right now. And I have 3 kids. I joined the program single, dating, almost engaged, finished it pregnant, and now have 3 kids. Their ages 10, 8, and 5. So that's me. Pass it on to Alex.
Hi there, I'm Alex Ahrendsen. I graduated in 2017, and I'm currently doing brand and marketing at Toyota. A little bit about my background. I studied English and political science, not at all related to marketing, but here I am today in marketing, and my track was marketing and brand. So loved the program. It really kind of pivoted my career in this direction and into business. Prior to that, I was actually working on Capitol Hill, working for a senator at the time, and decided I wanted to go into the private sector. And so that's what the MBA program did for me. It was able to transition my career into that. Actually started in consumer packaged goods at Dr. Pepper, and then was recruited to come to Toyota. So I'm in Dallas, Texas. Funny story, I met my husband in the program. He was my second year mentor. It's who you're assigned to when you're a first year student. So kind of funny. He currently works at Frito-Lay. He's in consumer packaged goods right across the street from Toyota. And we are working on a partnership together right now. So it's our business has continued to move through our lives, which is funny. I have a three-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter as well. So got a couple kids, had them after the program.
Great. Thanks, Alex. And then Katie, we'll wrap up with you.
All right. Hi, guys. It's great to be here. So my name is Katie Apker, and I graduated in 2021, technically. So I started in 2018. I started with 3 kids and had a 4th during my 3rd year. So I took a 3rd year. So know that that's an option if you want to be a sane person during the MBA program. Let's see. My undergrad degree was in physiology and developmental biology. I went to law school for a little bit, and then I ran a business for 10 years before I started my MBA. So I'm the personality type that needs to try things out for myself before I know if they're great or if I do not want to do them, and I want to pivot away from them. So I was running a business that was in the process of being sold. So I was ready for transition to the next thing with the MBA program. And I'm currently post-MBA in a PhD program studying business, studying entrepreneurship and gender at Cornell University. So I'm in my 3rd year. It's going great. Hello from the East Coast. And that's me.
Ithaca, love it, love it. Great. Okay. First question. This is a great one because I'm sure a lot of people on the call are going through the same things, but how and why did you choose to get your BYU MBA? I'll jump in on this one because I think mine is very random. And I think I was probably the most naive person to ever join an MBA program in the history. Probably not, but it feels like it. I was teaching music, like I said, and I decided when I was 11 to have a career in music. And I'm a very focused person. Everything I'd done had been music related since then. So I was teaching, and if I'm this is typical LDS woman mindset. If I'm still single after 2 years of teaching, I'm going to get my master's degree. So I got into some conducting programs, choral conducting, got, fellowships and everything. And then I had this moment of like late 20s, like, what if I'm single forever? Like, do I really want a teacher's salary for the rest of my life if I'm single? And I was like, this is my one chance to kind of reset my path. But like, what else could I do? Music has been my goal for forever. And I thought back in my life of the other times when I felt really alive and really engaged. And it was, I worked for EFY for 6 years, and I went from being a counselor to leading sessions of 800 kids. And I loved when I was in charge of the sessions. I loved setting vision and enrolling people around a shared vision and mentoring and managing people. I loved solving crises when they came up. I loved it and I was good at it. So I was like, okay, I could do leadership. But I was like, I don't know if I want to go into business. Business seems like sleazy. All they care about is money, and that's evil, right? This is like my musician mindset. My dad was like, I'll pay for you to take the GMAT. Because I was like, I already took the GRE. I have no money left. I was a teacher. Like, I'll pay for you to take the GMAT. So I took it and I got a good score. I was like, well, it was late. It was late in the application year. I was like, I guess I'll apply at BYU and the U because, I'm single, and that's the place where single LDS women go is Utah. So I randomly applied. I didn't know what supply chain was. I thought finance and marketing were yucky because it dealt with money. I was like, I don't know. I can tell a story about why HR would, why I'd be interested in that. So that's how I ended up there, because I thought I was going to be single the rest of my life. It ended up that I started dating my now husband in the middle of the application process. Like I said, we got engaged October of my first year, married in February, and I graduated pregnant. What I didn't know is I would marry someone 4 years younger than me who'd kind of been a slacker. And so I needed the degree to put him through school because he then started his undergrad and we had 2 kids. And I was so grateful that I had an incredibly well-paying job in a company that was incredibly flexible and supportive. So I could be the mom I wanted to be while working and while putting him through school. So that's my story.
Yeah, I'll jump in. My story is similar to Lori's in some ways. I was single on the East Coast. And ultimately, for me, it was more about kind of the different career options. I loved working on Capitol Hill, but unfortunately, there's a ceiling there really until you run for office. That's really how you start like progressing. And so I'd been doing public relations on Capitol Hill for a couple years, but kind of felt like I wanted more of the kind of the science and analytics part of business and marketing. And so that's why marketing appealed to me. It really is kind of a perfect blend of creativity and analytics. And so decided that's what I wanted to pursue. I applied for a variety of different programs, UCLA, a couple schools on the East Coast, and BYU. I was accepted to several, but ultimately decided BYU because of the cost. I knew I wouldn't be in a ton of debt. When I was graduating, I could ultimately start making a larger salary. I knew that they had great connections to big companies, and that's where I wanted to be. And I knew that they had a good, marketing program. So that's ultimately why I picked BYU.
I can share a little bit. So I mentioned out of my undergrad, I started at a tech startup. It was a startup at the time, but it's Qualtrics now, and I'm sure most of you have heard of it. And I kind of felt like I didn't know what I was doing out of my undergrad. I didn't know how to interview. I didn't know how to find jobs. There wasn't a lot of support from my undergrad program for that kind of thing, unless you wanted to go get a PhD in math or something, which I didn't want to do. And so when I was working at this company, I felt like I was surrounded by people who just knew a lot more about business than I did. And I felt like it was frustrating to not be able to have conversations at that level. And they all had MBAs, a lot of them did. I always knew I wanted to go back to school. I didn't know in what. And then, like I mentioned, my husband and I ended up going together. He had always wanted to get an MBA. And yeah, so then decided to apply. Like Lori, felt super naive, felt like even though I wasn't in music, I still felt like I don't know anything. I don't know anything about business. I don't know all this vernacular. I clicked on the supply chain box kind of in the same way. Like I knew I didn't think I liked finance. I didn't think I liked this. So I clicked supply chain and it ended up working out. But and I remember walking in the first day, everybody in their suits, and I was like, I do not belong here. Like this doesn't make any sense. This isn't me. And then having obviously a really great time. But yeah, so it was kind of like my business environment was pushing me to learn a little bit more. There was problems I knew I wanted to solve at the business that I just felt like I didn't have the tools for. Yeah, and then ultimately, I think the other big thing about the MBA is it just opens up your mind to all the possibilities. Like, and now I'm in sourcing, which I had never heard of before. Like there's just all these options out there and different ways to make money, even if Lori doesn't like making money. There's just all these different things you can do. And the MBA just opens your eyes. And that was a huge turning point for me.
I love that. And to clarify, I love making money now. It totally changed my perspective too on what it means. Any other thoughts?
Well, I'll tell my quick story, just because it's a little bit different. I was considering a lot of different avenues to go down when I was exiting entrepreneurship, but I had a spouse whose name is Mark, who went through the BYU MBA program about 3 years before me, 3 or 4 years. And I had watched the extremely formative experience that it could be. Like Elise said, the number of avenues and doors that it can open for an individual. I watched people who, I was part of Embasa, right? The Spouses Association. And I had watched all of these individuals go in as one person and exit as another person. And so I'd seen firsthand what it could do for not only your learning of business vernacular, but what it could do for as a person to just like in a fully developmental way, and to open up doors for them to not only become, financially solvent and secure for the rest of their lives, but also to explore strengths that they may have that they had never explored before, just areas of the world and community contribution that they had never really tapped into before. And so I saw how many doors it could open, and I wanted that for myself. And BYU was, and it kind of like fulfilled on all those promises.
Love that. Julie, I think you got kicked out again. We were just finishing the first question about how and why did you choose an MBA? So if you wanted to answer that, I'll give you a chance, and then we'll go on to number 2.
Sure. I love all the responses so far. My personal experience, so right before coming to the MBA program, like I mentioned, I was working with Stephen Covey, and as this program manager, I was traveling all over the world with him and working with the leaders of LG and Microsoft and all these people that I thought, wow, these people, they have this amazing pedigree. And not that I necessarily wanted, I don't ever have the desire to be in their shoes at that level, but I wanted to be able to be a leader and help organizations. I found a draw to the organizational behavior aspect, leadership development, which kind of drew me to the OBHR program. But I recognized pretty quickly, like if I wanted to be able to help organizations, I needed to be able to have the credibility and needed to have a higher education. So that's really what drew me to the program, or just to MBA and MBA school in general. But the MBA program at BYU personally, I love the enter to learn, go forth to serve. Like the purpose that we're here is, yes, it is to, to be good leaders in our families, in our communities, in our church. And I don't know that there's that many organizations or universities outside of BYU that have that same perspective.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay. The second question is about life balance. And how did you manage being a student along with all of your other life responsibilities, things happening in your life? Katie, will you kick this one off? Because I would love to hear. I love that you took 3 years to get through. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of boundaries and taking control of work-life balance. I'd love to have you kick it off, and then the rest of us can chime in.
Sure. So I would say the earlier you shed like the both unhealthy and untrue cultural expectations of women's domesticity, the better. And by that, I mean, just kind of really question, like there's so many forces at play asking you to do so many different things. And I think looking closely at them and questioning them and then choosing for yourself what you focus on is essential for you to retain your sanity. So that's a very like high level abstract answer, but it comes down to like knowing that what you're doing is good, right? It's good for you. It's good in for your own development. It's good from the perspective of God. It's a good thing. Okay, so that's like a foundational thing. And then getting into like brass tax systems. Like, do you know how to like get yourself up and ready in 15 or 20 minutes and get out the door? Do you have systems about that? Do you have systems related to like getting an effective workout within a short amount of time? Do you have systems that help you know when and where you're going to like effectively feed your spirit, right? Increase your spirituality. Do you have systems related to childcare, right? So like childcare is a huge thing in our lives, and it goes just beyond the time of your breastfeeding, right? It takes finding like quality childcare that's for enough hours of the day, that is accessible to you, that's close to your home. And if those things are not in place, like you're going to have a really hard time feeling any semblance of balance. Let's be real, because organizations are not set up right now for balance. They'll like work is gaseous. I like to think of it. It will take up as much time as you'll give it. And organizations are always going to ask more from you, right? So it's setting yourself up to combat those constant demands while having like systems that make your life, your time use effective. But also really like in the end, once you have those systems, I think having a partner that's tremendously respectful and that you can be equally yoked with is essential. But even with really good systems and really good time management and grit, and you're organized and you're type A or not type A, but you still have good systems and you have a great spouse and you're very egalitarian. Even with all those things set up, you still have to combat the cultural world and realities that we live in that are going to yank more, always be asking more from you, right? So I think that there's like a thick skin that you develop over time. In addition to just, life hacks and systems and efficiency, there's a thick skin you develop of like the things you choose to care about and focus on and go deep with, like your work and your relationships and trying to do come follow me and all those good things in life that matter. And then knowing where to like what to be completely mediocre on, like be like choosing and being deliberate about like, I told my sister, my New Year's resolution is literally to tidy less. Like I should just be picking up crap off the floor less often. My time is better spent doing higher level things. But I think that there are forces in our society that, especially for women, let's be real, like the gendering of domesticity is real. And so being really explicit about like, I am focusing on this and I'm dropping all of these things from my life. I'm dropping X, Y, and Z. And for everyone, it's different, right? For me, it's like, I don't go to book club. I don't do social media. I don't do a lot of these things that might be beneficial for another person, but I like am specifically not doing them and sucking at them in my life so that I can be better in other areas. But it's hard. I'm just letting you know it's hard. Find good childcare, have a good spouse.
Katie, I love everything you just said, and I want to go write that down. I feel like I need to connect with you later. I will say so to give you guys a little bit of background. When I met my spouse, so he was the second year in the program, and we started dating. We got married right after my first year. He had accepted a job in Dallas and at Frito-Lay, and so he ultimately moved out here. And so I decided to expedite my graduation, and so I took 20 credit hours my second semester of my first year, and then 21 credit hours my first semester of my second year. And I worked through I did credit hours through my internship during the summer too. And it was so hard. I'm not going to lie. Like I was working all the time on my classwork, on my internship over the summer. I was recruiting in the fall while also trying to do this really heavy load. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, looking back at the time, I think the grace of God helped me get through it, to be completely honest. And like Katie said, I think you have to prioritize certain things. So for me, it was really recruiting. That became very important. Obviously, I wanted to keep up on my classwork. That was also important. But really knowing my purpose to going to the MBA program was to get a great job. And so focusing on that was really crucial. I have to say, looking back now, it has prepared me so well for being a mom in corporate America. And I even feel like I'm just as busy now. So it does set you up really well for the future. I will say that. And it is very doable, even with 20 to 21 credit hours.
Awesome. Yeah, getting clear on purpose, getting clear on priorities, and then making choices. Yeah. Good. Any other thoughts? Julie, I think you're still muted.
Apologies,
go.
technology is not my friend today. I'll just share. So I had a different experience. I was single in the program. I was single until about 5 years ago, frankly. So I've lived I kind of did the single thing for a long time, including through the program. One of the things that I thought was really, I think it's for you prospective students to just consider is you have a team, especially your first semester. That team is like your lifeline. That team is family, and here we are 11 years later, and our team is still really tight. And we like you said, Alex, one of the main purpose that we're there is to find a job, and we all had that united vision, and so we're all on different tracks. And so I think when recruiters were there for HR, it's like right out of the gate, like first week of the program. And everybody kind of rallied. And so it was like, hey, you help each other out, pick up the slack when other people have recruiters coming, et cetera. And that team is so helpful, and it's such a collaborative program. I think that helped me maintain balance for sure. The other things I did was like the things I didn't do in my undergrad, like I took a swimming class, and I never took like Dance 180 that everybody takes their freshman year of college at BYU. I finally did that. And so I think just keeping it balanced, I actually trained and ran a marathon my second year. So it's like it's definitely possible, just kind of figuring out what your big rocks are, prioritizing those things, and then I think things fall into place, and it takes time. The first semester is a little crazy. I'm not going to lie. It is for everybody. But yes, I think finding out what you value and figuring out time when you can do those things, and then leveraging your team.
Yeah. On top of what everyone else has said, my big aha in the MBA program was that grades aren't the only thing that matters. It's the first time I got a B, and we're graded on a curve. You guys, it's still graded on a curve, Sean. We were graded on a curve. So you had to try it, like not try it all to get less than a B. And I think I got a B plus, but it didn't matter. Like it affected zero where I got a job and what I did, because I learned what I needed to. I made choices, and I had to realize that like actually that B plus had zero effect on my life. Maybe my ego a little, but like maybe my ego needed a hit a little bit sometimes. And it's liberating to like exactly what Katie said, realize like what actually matters and not, and make the choices and then own them. And then it's not quite as hard. So good.
So can I add just like a funny, like, I still don't know to this day what I graduated with. I figured if I didn't have the grades to graduate, they wouldn't have let me. So you're right. Grades don't matter.
I have no idea. I've never looked at my GPA. Okay, here's the kicker question. Not the last one, but I think the big one. Was it worth it? In the end, was it worth it? I think the answer is yes for all of us from what I've heard, but would love to hear why it was worth it for you.
Maybe I can kick it off.
Go ahead, Elise.
Oh, sorry, Alex. Yeah, I think like I mentioned, I would do it again if I could. And I always tell people, I've probably made this speech to people several different times, but like the biggest things I got out of it were, I can't remember who mentioned, but like a new sense of confidence. I felt like Katie said, there's just so much growth that happens. And I came out a different person. I wasn't shy to speak up in a room full of 20 men anymore. I knew that I had good ideas and could bring them to the table. The second thing is like lifelong wonderful friends. You meet so many people who are in the same kind of phase of life as you, or a little bit different, but you connect so much on so many things, and you go through something really difficult together. And you just have these wonderful friends that I hope are there for a while. And then the last thing is we've talked about classes and how classes are hard, but there's also a lot of like just building yourself classes, opportunities for that, whether it's like dance or swimming, or there's classes in the MBA where you learn about how you think and about how, like Katie said, like how to use your time the best way. So it's not just about like finance and how a business runs, but also like how do you build yourself into a better person so that you can be effective in more areas of your life. I also got to travel a bunch. Some of the travel was paid for by the program, some of it wasn't, but that was also a really wonderful opportunity to see how businesses are run in other countries. So yeah, ultimately, definitely worth it. Recommend.
Alex, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll hop in and say that I too, yeah, feel the exact same as Elise. The network you build and the friendships you make are incredible. I don't want to get to the money, and I know that, but that's a really great benefit. I have to say, I made about 3 times as much with my starting salary after the MBA program than I did before. So that was a huge benefit. That was really nice. Um, yeah, I mean, overall, it was just a great experience, good to learn new skills. And personally, I love school. And so it was kind of fun to take a break from business life and everyday work life and that grind and go back to school and learn and focus on yourself again. So absolutely worth it.
I think that network that's kind of been mentioned, like the relationships. I mean, as I look at, I guess what am I, 11 years out, every job that I've had coming out of the program, I was with Adobe most recently for 7 years, but even that one came from my core classmate and like my core team. That there was the network is phenomenal. There's so many classmates that are reaching out like, hey, I need this, or do you have an opening there? I would love for you to come and work for my company. I mean, that happens all the time. I think also as women, we are much harder on ourselves. And I mean, studies have proven this, and we think, there's kind of the imposter syndrome, those types of things. But I think coming out of the program definitely gives you confidence that really we can do whatever we want to do, whatever it is that we decide that is important enough for us to do. We're capable. We're so capable. We're not a step behind, the male version. So I think in so many different ways.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, for me, I can't imagine being where I am now without the MBA program. I for anyone that's in, a field not business related, I don't know how I would have done such a huge course change when all of my experience had been in music. So for me, it was invaluable because it was this inflection point. It was easy to tell the story to companies of why I was going into HR, and it gave me credibility. Like, oh, okay, she's done music for 20 years, but she has an MBA, and a Procter and Gamble picked me up, and an HP made me like, why else would they have paid attention to me unless I had this? So I got to use the MBA name. I got to use the BYU name. I'd taken, 4 semesters of classes. I didn't feel necessarily prepared, maybe unlike some of you. I didn't feel prepared, but it gave me the credibility to other people to then go and prove to myself that I had what it took. So I still had imposter syndrome for about 5 years, but so having that course change, it just opened up those doors. The MBA program is also incredible at preparing you and giving you the skills to get a job. Like I think, half of my first semester, because all of our recruiting happened then for HR, was getting really good at interviewing, really good at resumes. And I feel incredibly equipped for the rest of my life to get a job. So that job prep was huge. And the Sherpas that coach you, I don't know if they still call them Sherpas. Alex's husband was hers. I love that. And yeah, the connections forever. You're part of an alumni group that feels a lot of trust with each other. I think even people I don't know, if I see a BYU MBA, there's just a level of trust and credibility there. So hugely impactful, and really important for me in that course change.
As the point of evidence about the network, this Sunday I have just the semi-annual Zoom call with a bunch of us MBAs of the year that I started, just because we like to touch base and we just like to chat, and so it's real and it's lasting, which is amazing. And I guess I'd also say, in addition to all of like the very practical reasons to get an MBA, I think it's really important also when it comes from the perspective of like the social fabric we live in. So you think about the example you are to the generations after you, to your peers. I think women, especially Latter-day Saint women, participating in this way is extremely important from a social perspective, from the examples that you set, from the leadership that you can provide. I think it's an amazing thing to get a BYU MBA.
Can I just add something to that, Katie? It is, I really like that point about like being a Latter-day Saint woman in business. There is the cutthroat and the, eye for eye type of, there are those people in business. One of the things that I really wanted to do was, as I continue to grow, go up the ladder and grow in leadership responsibilities, et cetera, is I wanted to make sure that I was still a light for the gospel and that we can be Christ-like in our business, dealings with people. And I mean, I'm sure I was not perfect. Let me tell you that. But I think people know that you're a BYU MBA, they expect something. And I wanted to make sure that I represented that well and brought something different than, the cutthroat type of things that you can see sometimes.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who is considering a BYU MBA?
I would say be aware of the companies that recruit at BYU, as well as kind of the connections, just so that kind of, if you kind of are targeting a certain field, that those connections are there and you can recruit with those companies. There are other opportunities to recruit outside of the ones that come on campus. There's several diversity conferences that we were encouraged to attend. I went to those, and actually that's where I found my internship and my full-time role. But it is good to know kind of who BYU is connected with and where alumni have been, because that's ultimately who your network will be to find a job. So that's what I would say.
Fully agree with that. Quick story. I was working in the Denver Temple before when I was like applying for the program, and I got in and I found out one of the women I was working with was going to the program too. And it was like July, right? And I had just decided to do this, and we were trying to take an accounting course that we had to take as prep. And like, I was so naive. And she's like, so what companies are you targeting? I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like worried about like my classes. And she's like, well, you need to be connecting with people. And I was like, and it was fine. The fact that I hadn't done it ahead of time, I was totally fine. But I love the advice, Alex, to look into like, if you want to do this or if you want to do this, like, BYU can set you up really, really well for certain things. And then be aware of, there are areas where you're going to have to go hustle on your own. A couple more pieces of advice. If you're like considering whether or not to apply, I would say like, just do it. Like me, like I didn't know if I actually wanted to, but it was kind of like I did it and then doors kept opening. And when they were opening, it was hard to not walk through them. And then look at the ROI. Again, if you're like debating, it's the most affordable MBA I think you could possibly get. And Alex, exactly 3x is what I made starting, which is mind-blowing to me. I think a couple of the other women talked about this, but you will be better at everything as a result of your MBA. It will affect how you are a friend, how you're a parent, how you are a child, how you are a primary teacher, how you're a Relief Society president, how you are a PTO treasurer. You will be better at everything because of what you learn in the MBA program and your experiences there. And then the last super practical thing, if you're like me and you're super naive, I don't know if this is still a thing, but before the program, we had to take like a summer online course in statistics and accounting, just so we had some foundations. If you're like me and you know nothing, also add a course in finance, because it took me 3 finance courses to realize that discount rates didn't mean like 20% off at the store. So it was really rough my first couple weeks, really rough. I ended up doing great. I got an A in that course. It was fine. But if you have gaps, just talk to someone who's been in the program. Maybe take a course on Coursera or LinkedIn Learning on finance or wherever you might have some gaps, because I wish I would have done that.
I'll add 2 pieces of advice. If you don't have a business background, which I didn't have a direct business background, I attended BYU for my undergrad, and I knew that the business program was really grueling. So that was kind of intimidating to me, to be honest. Like, oh, I don't have an accounting degree or finance or whatever. That didn't matter. I mean, yes, I didn't have the leg up per se or the advantage of that knowledge, and I had to learn it. But like I said, the team is so helpful, and your classmates professors, etc. So I would say, don't have this background. And then I'd say, if you're going to regret it in 5 years not doing it, then do it.
And
I
I
love
just
that.
want to add to that. My sister's on this call. I convinced her to come because I'm trying to get her to get an MBA. And she was saying to me, like, yeah, it sounds really great, but like you've done it. You're someone who was able to do it. And I just want to say, like, on this call, we've got someone working on a PhD, someone at Toyota, someone at P&G, someone who has triplets and is like running her own thing. Like, these are all very, very, very impressive women. But I guarantee you, like, we all started the program going, what am I doing? And am I good at stuff like this? And am I going to belong? Like, we all started there, maybe not everyone. And like, it sounds like so amazing on the other half, but like we all had to start somewhere. And like Lori said, if you're thinking about applying, just do it. You can't make a decision unless that door is open for you. But I just want to like emphasize, like, all these people are not impressive because they started that way. They are impressive because they went through this program, they did some hard stuff and got there.
Great ad.
Any other pieces of advice? Okay. Last one. What questions did you have before the program? And you can answer them as well, because probably someone else on here has the question.
I'll go. I have to jump in just a second. So one of my biggest questions, and something that people often brought up to me, is it going to actually be worth it? I had a great, job in PR. It didn't pay necessarily great, but I liked what I did. And I could have gone directly to maybe a PR agency or do something different. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to have to step away from a salary for 2 years, spend money, potentially get into a little bit of debt to do this. And I have to say, I mean, we already talked about the benefits of the salary and kind of starting salary, but it did definitely pay off. It was worth it. So that was my biggest takeaway is, yes, it is worth it, especially if you're trying to pivot your career and look for new opportunities.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks for joining. I know you have to drop at some point, but really good to meet you. And thanks for your thoughts. What else?
One of the questions I had was, I was filling out the application and I didn't know which track to join. And maybe this goes along with like pieces of advice. I would try to find people, who either have MBAs or have been in business and just kind of pick their brains for any advice they have for you for going into the program. But I remember being very confused about which track to join. So there's finance, marketing, HR, entrepreneurship, supply chain. I think that's all of them. And I kind of knew what those meant and I kind of didn't. And so I'm sure there's something on the website, but I would just talk to as many people as if you have confusion about that. You're not stuck with a track once you join one, but it's going to guide you on like which classes you'll take, what company you'll join. It's going to have an impact on where you end up. So being informed there, I think can be helpful. And yeah, I would have appreciated like more of an answer there.
I'll echo that advice very specifically because I do think at the beginning it feels like you need to have the end. You need to know where you're going to end up and you need to know exactly the type of job that you want. And while an MBA does open up so many doors, it can feel like you get decision paralysis, right? Of like knowing the end from the beginning. And so speaking to people, the earlier, the better, and not being intimidated about reaching out to them, reaching out via email, because they will have insights for you about the types of jobs that are available, what track they would actually relate to, and that's going to affect what box you tick, right, on your application. And as somebody who really didn't know whether or not an MBA for sure, like I knew that it was very formative and it would open up doors, but I didn't know if there was still a specific fit for me. I'm in the very small minority of people that end up in PhDs afterwards. And there are supports for that as well, but it does make navigating it a little bit more of an unknown. So I think talking to people, like Elise said, talking to people beforehand asking them about which companies, like was mentioned earlier, Alex mentioned it, about what companies actually come to recruit, and start kind of, it can be intimidating to kind of try to sort all of that out, but lean into that work of like, okay, these are the companies. What do I know about this company? I'll get on their website. I'll talk to maybe an alum or a former MBA who went there, chit chat about them, with them about their job. Just kind of lean into that work, because it is work in addition to the classes that you're going to be taking, but lean into that so you can really kind of figure out where you actually want to land. And on a completely different note, like I was really concerned about, I guess I'll call it like a benevolent sexism or patriarchy that might exist at BYU. And that was one of my questions, like, what is it really like to be, frankly, in the gender minority, and to be at an institution like BYU? I mean, I was an undergrad at BYU. I love BYU, but I still was like, what's it going to really be like to be in a masculinized field of business as a woman and a Latter-day Saint woman? And I asked those questions of my poor interviewer beforehand, who probably did not enjoy my very pointed questions, but I found it to be both deliberately and incredibly inclusive, the environment in general. So I had a fantastic time as a woman there. And so if that's something that you're worried about, feel free to ping me or talk to other people and their experiences. But that was a distinct worry of mine, and it ended up amazingly.
So my experience, something I would add, and I love everything, especially love what you just said, Katie. I think that I found I had a great experience with the majority. I mean, with the men who are the majority. Great friends came from that. One of the things that I thought about, and maybe some of you are in this boat, is that I was single, and I was wondering, like, how is this going to play out, right? Like going back for a master's, if I wanted to grow my career, potentially have to, not that I'm not from Utah, but I was thinking like, I'd love to be married. I'd love to find that person. And obviously Utah is kind of the land of milk and honey, apparently. And so what's that going to look like if I'm in remote locations, but I'm furthering my career, and just kind of this like paradox. And what I personally kind of found was, if the Lord can part the Red Sea, he can find somebody wherever I'm at. But I tried to put myself in positions. So when I left MBA school, I went and lived in Huntsville, Alabama, and then Cleveland, Ohio, and Louisville, Kentucky. And I dated in all those places, and I had great experiences. I got to work in the temple, in the Louisville temple. So there were a lot of rich opportunities that came. Well, I still prioritize that. Well, I kind of like doubly prioritize, growing myself, personally, secularly, if you will, but also kind of also looking for that eternal companion. And in the end, it ended up, I found my husband much later in life than probably what is normal, but it's worked out fine. And I think maybe just having faith that the Lord will guide your path.
Amen to that. Yep. My life didn't happen the way I had planned it at all. And a lot of the things, like I said, that happened to me, like I never anticipated getting an MBA. I never thought I'd be a working mom. I thought that was like the unrighteous choice. And I am so grateful for the way my life has worked out, and that some of those things were delayed, because the life experiences I've had, couldn't have happened if different things wouldn't have been in place. So I just really trust, like Julie, you said, like the Lord has a plan. And the BYU MBA was a part of mine that helped put the things in place for where I am today. And I'm super happy in my career. I'm super happy with my personal life and my development, and my family. So just a couple, my questions I had before the program, and a personal story with the track thing. You have to choose a track when you apply. Love the advice to talk to people and just find out where you might have interest. There's no like point of no return. So I got in the HR program, obviously, because that's the only thing I felt like I could tell a story about why I wanted it. Got an HR internship, did employment branding, and realized I really liked that branding piece. And came back to the program thinking I might want to do marketing instead. And so my next semester, so second year, first semester, was mostly marketing classes. And all my HR peers were in like some HR classes. And I was like, but I really love this marketing stuff. So I took 2 marketing classes and a sales class. And I ended up sticking with HR for a variety of reasons. But one of the things I'm known for now at P&G is being incredibly in touch with my consumer, who happens to be employees. But all of my marketing knowledge is what makes me a really effective HR person. I don't think I even finished the HR track. I don't even know what that means. Again, we probably got some little like certificate on our diploma that Julie and I never looked at. I didn't take all the HR classes because you get to create your own path. So yes, you declare a track, but like mine was half marketing, half HR, and I'm really, really glad it was. So that's one thing on tracks. The sexism piece, yeah, you're the minority. It's an LDS university with graduate degree, right? But what I loved is I'm not as close to my team. I'm really close to the women, and the women in my program are the ones that get together on a call every year. And when we do our reunions, we're the ones that hang out and go to lunch afterwards. And there's a real beauty in the shared experience with the women in my program. So I love that. And then I guess to close it off, the biggest question I had coming into the program was, can I hack it? Like, can I really do it? I had huge imposter syndrome. And I don't know if it was real or not, but I felt like no one else really thought I belonged there, whether it's because I was a woman or because I had my, non-traditional background. But there were a couple of moments in classes when I realized like, I belong here. Like, I am not an imposter. I belong here. And so just trust that, like, if you have a desire, go for it, and you are enough. And if you feel like you're not enough, like, the Lord's going to make up the rest. Like, you will be fine. If you get into that program, you're going to be fine. So you can hack it. It's not easy. And there will be lots of times where you'll like mess up or you won't feel like you're enough, but you are. You'll make it and you'll be fine. So just go for it.
Amen.
Cool. Any last thoughts? Okay, Sean, I'll pass it back to you to close it out.
What a wonderful panel. Thank you for your time. I want to thank our panelists, especially Lori, for moderating that, but to Elise, to Julie, to Katie, to Alex. You came back with such great information that really helps make a difficult decision. We know that it's a hard choice to commit your time, your energy, your effort, your resources towards education. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to communicate in the best way possible what makes the BYU MBA a special experience. So I really enjoyed hearing your stories and having this chance to hear from each of you about why you chose BYU and what benefit it's made for your life, for your career, for your community, and for the various organizations and activities you're involved in. Thank you very much for your participation. We appreciated getting to meet everyone and getting to chat. If you'd like to stay around, we also want to address some questions. If you have a question, just jump in.
I have a question for Katie. I'm actually looking to apply to BYU for my MBA program, and I have two little ones. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. How did you sort of like reason with yourself? I think I have a little bit of a dilemma in saying, like, is the time that I'm going to go study and do something really great for myself, is it going to be worth taking some of that time away from my children because they are so little right now? And granted, the older one will be going to school. But yeah, how did you come to grips with that kind of moral question?
It's a good question, because I remember one day sitting in my house and I said to myself, am I going to screw up my children? That was like I was like, I need to know that I'm not going to screw them up. And I think it's, for me, I like to conceptualize it as I want my children to have so many, not just me, but so many amazing adults in their lives that can teach them things that I can't teach them, that can provide them love that I can't provide them. That includes aunts and uncles, that includes caregivers, that includes teachers, right? And I want them, we talk about networks as adults, but I want my children to have a broad and diverse network of people, adults that love them and can teach them in their lives. And I think that there is not an abundance of quality childcare in the United States right now. There isn't, right? And so I think grappling with that will be something that you grapple with from the time they're infants to till they're out of your house, about making sure that these spirits that have been entrusted with you are being parented by you in a way that you feel comfortable with, right? So for us, that meant when they were very little, we usually try, this is very brass tacks, but we usually tried to find one-on-one care for them generally when they were very little. And that was usually after, knock on wood, we had taken all of the parental leave we could, you know, both like my husband and me, right? So both of us trying to have care for them one-on-one when they're very little, and then one-on-one for a while. And then we would ease them into more of a fuller time childcare situation. But honestly, it does take two partners, right? Two parents, prayerful consideration of what the realities are and the options are, the needs of your children. It's a complex ecosystem, and I think might be one of the main barriers to really like robust labor force participation among women, right? Because, and especially within the church, we are told that it is our primary responsibility, right? And so I think that is something that I had to pray about a lot, find good childcare. We tried a lot of different things out. Some things worked and some things didn't. We can get offline and I will give you the whole rundown of what I've done over the last, my oldest is 14. So I've been doing this for a while and tried a lot of different things, but it is something that you have to prayerfully go to the Lord, think about your children, talk with your spouse about, but it can turn out great. It really can.
Cool. Thank you. That makes me feel better. And the decision, obviously, I want, like my daughter is the older one, and I want her to be like, oh, mom can still be a mom and go to school and do something for her. And so I think she's finally getting into the age where she realizes those things. And so thank you for sharing your experience. And I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
And
There's a
Alejandra,
Daniel Tiger for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's just one Daniel Tiger that's like, you can be more than one thing. And I remember being like, opened my mind.
These cartoons are getting so good.
Daniel Tiger and Bluey is like all we need for parenting, I feel like. Alejandra, you didn't ask me, but I started work 7 months pregnant. I worked for 5 years. I quit. I stayed home for a year and a half. And I decided to go back when I had almost 5, almost 3, and almost 1-year-old. That doesn't work out, but whatever it was, 5, 3, and 1-ish. And what was I going to say? Oh, shoot, I lost my train of thought because I was distracted with the ages. Oh, you guys, that's embarrassing. Oh, one of the reasons I went back is because I had 2 girls. My 2 youngest were girls, and I wanted them to know that they can be whatever they want. Because like I said, I'd grown up thinking that if I did anything other than stay-at-home mom, I was wicked. And it took me, I quit because I thought, even after 5 years in the workforce, and I decided to go back, and I had to go through a lot of soul searching and gospel searching and a lot of praying to God to have the confidence that actually this was good. It wasn't just okay, but it was really, really good for me. And it's taken me many years, and there's still mom guilt. But I'm so confident that for me and us, this is the right choice. So happy to chat offline too, but it's a very personal decision.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. I appreciate that. And I think this in itself, like the information session, has been so helpful. So thank you, Sean, because I think, obviously these are questions that I can't ask to men, and the mom guilt and like, what did you do? And do you make a decision? And so this in itself has been super helpful in just solidifying like my decision to apply and to move forward. So.
And also the BYU MBA program is the #1 place to go if you like want that balance. People brought their kids, they brought their babies. Like we had like 3-year-olds in the back of the class on a tablet because that's just what you do. And what's great is if you have to miss a class period because your kid is sick, you miss a class period because your kid is sick. Like what's beautiful is it's probably the most family-friendly program you could be in.
It is ranked consistently as the most family-friendly MBA program. So it is that, but having me tell you that isn't as useful as having alumni program tell you that actual truth.
Other people hold your babies and stuff, it's just so supportive.
It is so supportive.
You might find babysitters too.
Yep.
In the program.
Yes.
Yep. Oh my gosh, a classmate's spouse that wants.
Yes.
Yeah. That's at home with their kids and they need money to help pay tuition. 100%.
Yeah. And having watched, I'm very close to the Cornell MBA program, and it's been stark, the contrast between levels of family friendliness. It has been, we have friends who happen to have 2 kids that went through the MBA program, and they were like anomalies and no one knew what to do with them. And I had the opposite experience where it's like I had at one point like a toddler under my table in the back row of my strategy class, just sitting on an iPad, because it was just, that's what happened that day. I have no idea why, I don't remember, but like that was just part and parcel to the experience.
Did
And
any
it's
of you
amazing to
have
see a lot of
professors?
other fathers.
Like I've heard stories of professors actually going to the students and saying, like, I get this. I was where you were. I understand this.
Wow.
Don't sweat your assignments, or go be with your spouse during this time. Like the professors have been through it too. And it's an amazing angle to have professors who recognize that although your MBA is important to you, you have a real life outside of the class.
Or
There
your
was a
professor will
professor-
hold your baby.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard of professors, I think it was Dr. Money. I don't even know if he's still there, but
You still here? Yep.
is he? Like, I think
He's threatening to retire.
is he? Like if somebody had a baby that was born and he had a gift for the baby. Like it was really sweet.
Thank you all for participating here. We're going to send out a follow-up to everyone who's registered for this. Hopefully that gets to your sister Elise, and it'll have the video, a link to this video, and contact information that's been generously provided again by our panelists of alumni and wonderful speakers. Thank you guys for your time. Have a great rest of your week. Have a good long weekend if that's what you've got scheduled. And we appreciate it. We'd love to help you make this difficult decision in your life to decide where to spend your time, energy, and get your education.